It's a fairly widely held belief that the correlation between how good a movie is and how well it does at the box office is weak at best. Sometimes you get movies like Return of the King, Titanic, and Lawrence of Arabia, great movies that made bank at the box office. This video is not about those kinds of movies. No, here I want to talk about the films that are great movies unto themselves, but for whatever reason, audiences didn't see them during their initial theatrical run and they ended up tanking at the box office. Some are considered to be some of the best movies ever made, but all of them are pretty good and certainly worth a watch. I've often heard people call 2014's Edge of Tomorrow, directed by Doug Liman, the best video game movie not based on a video game. It's an interesting description and one that rings true. The movie is based on Hiroshi Sakurazaka's light novel All You Need Is Kill, which also got a manga adaptation and is getting an anime film that's coming out in 2026. The 2014 film stars Tom Cruise as Major William Cage, a public affairs officer who gets sent to meet his maker against an alien invasion. When the thinkable happens and he gets blasted, he finds himself stuck in a time loop, reliving the same day repeatedly while retaining his memories with each loop. He teams up with Emily Blunt's character, also stuck in the time loop, to try to figure out the alien's weakness and turn the tide of the war. The video game-like structure of die, learn, and repeat is a central mechanic of the movie and makes it a standout among other sci-fi films. The script, a masterclass unto its own, was written by Chris McQuarrie and Jess and John Henry Butterworth. It transformed what easily could have been a gimmicky premise into a genuinely thrilling sci-fi film, though a lot of that, of course, goes to Sakurazaka. Liman does a great job directing, crafting each iteration of the battles with increasing creativity. You see Cruise progress from a coward to a warrior through visual storytelling that, despite the conceit, never feels repetitive despite going through it so often. On top of that, a movie like this depends on chemistry, which Cruise and Blunt have in spades. Cruise needs to earn his heroism through literal trial and error, while Blunt's Rita Vertasky is tough, traumatized, and believable as a soldier. The alien design is pretty neat, as are the combat suits. Despite opening to critical acclaim, the movie would end up making $370 million against its $178 million budget, along with another $100 million on marketing. Whether or not it lost money is up in the air, but it does not look good, and it was certainly a commercial disappointment. The blame, I think, falls on the marketing and the release window. At first, it was titled All You Need Is Kill, a perfectly fine name considering it's the name of the source, but that got changed because WB didn't want kill in the title, so they changed it to Edge of Tomorrow, which is adequate at best. But it also got stuck between Disney's Maleficent, which proved to be a juggernaut, 22 Jump Street, and How to Train Your Dragon 2 the week after it, and it got clobbered by The Fault in Our Stars the day it was released. Edge of Tomorrow's esteem has only grown in the years since, and I think it's one of the best sci-fi and action films of the 2010s. It showed that you can make an intelligent, high-concept blockbuster. Considering it made nearly $400 million, there is a market for these kinds of movies. While a sequel has languished in development hell, the team is keen to do another one, and as of 2024, it seems like Warner Brothers is as well. Here's hoping. 2023's The Creator is one of the few totally original sci-fi movies that we've had in a while, and is, I think, a singularly impressive achievement. It wasn't adapted from anything, nor is it a remake or a sequel or anything like that. It's set in a futuristic Earth where the West is at war with AI following a nuclear detonation in Los Angeles in 2055. Okay, so maybe not wholly original. One can certainly see the gloss of The Terminator or Colossus the Forbin Project and other sci-fi movies here, but that's just how inspiration works. The movie stars John David Washington, who plays an ex-Special Forces agent grieving his wife's disappearance after his cover gets blown, but gets back in the game when he gets evidence that she might be alive. While on the mission, new things come to light and he ends up defecting for all intents and purposes. Edwards, one of my favorite directors working today, managed one hell of a feat here. While known for his handling of visual effects, he created a visually stunning world that feels lived in and tangible. It was a textured environment where advanced tech coexists with rural landscapes and everyday life. The film's sympathetic portrayal of AI as a persecuted minority caught between two sensibilities creates genuine emotional stakes, with Madeleine Yuna-Voiles, who plays a young AI simulant, delivering an impressive, affecting performance. And in its handling of AI, though a different sort, it deals with one of the great questions of our time and our future in an even-handed way. Edwards managed to make the movie on an $80 million budget, which is nothing short of impressive. It looks way more expensive. In a quote about his process, Edwards says, quote, "Our whole plan was just to go to the greatest locations in the world because the cost of a flight is way less than the cost of building a set. We were going to hopscotch around the world and shoot this film, then layer in the science fiction on top afterwards. If our film is trying to achieve something visually, it's trying to feel real in terms of science fiction." End quote. I'd say that he pulled the look off masterfully. It's futuristic and grounded at the same time, and more than anything, Edwards proved that artistry, smart filmmaking, and a director who knows what he wants are more important to getting a realistic-looking sci-fi world than endless resources. It got decent reviews, but made just over $100 million at the box office, a total flop. Critics praised the ambition, the heart, and the visuals, but alas, its release got caught up in the middle of the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes in 2023. The marketing did not land very well either, and perhaps some dismissed it as a generic sci-fi film. Rather, I think that Alex Godfrey of Empire puts it well, quote, "An inspired, soulful piece of sci-fi, the endlessly stunning visuals, all in service of a heartfelt, sensitive story. Gareth Edwards is the real deal. This is fantastic, enveloping cinema," end quote. This is the kind of movie that everyone says that they want. Smart, original, visually spectacular, competently written, directed by someone with a clear vision. I just hope that we're able to support more like it in the future. Peter Weir's 2003 classic, Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World, is an adaptation of Patrick O'Brian's beloved Aubrey Maturin series starring Russell Crowe as Captain Jack Aubrey of the HMS Surprise, who is in pursuit of a French ship. Crowe reunited with his A Beautiful Mind co-star Paul Bettany, who plays the ship's surgeon, Stephen Maturin. The story becomes a cat-and-mouse game that spans thousands of miles of ocean, with the crew facing storms, battles, medical crises, and the daily challenges of life at sea near the dawn of the 19th century. Weir, who's still alive and has had a long, storied career as a director, directed and co-wrote what ended up being an immersive, intelligent historical epic that respects the audience and trusts them to be able to follow along. The friendship between Aubrey and Maturin provides the emotional core of the movie. These are two men who respect each other deeply, despite their different worldviews. Their chemistry makes their philosophical debates as compelling as the action sequences. The film explores leadership, duty, obsession, and the cost of war in a way that's often rare to see in studio filmmaking, while still being spectacularly entertaining. Speaking of which, Master and Commander is about as epic as it gets for naval combat, at least so far. The battle scenes are visceral and confusing in the best way, capturing the chaos and brutality of wooden ship combat without glorifying it. Weir's attention to the shipboard life is deserving of praise as well. From what I understand, the movie is a remarkably accurate representation of sea life and naval combat at the time. From the depiction of children working on the ship to capturing how tight living quarters were with more than 100 men packed together like sardines. You see the splintering of wood upon impact by cannon fire, something that could be as deadly as the cannonballs themselves. Battles aren't like what they are in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, which I'm a fan of as well. There, they're glamorous, almost ballet-like. Here, they're hot, messy, and chaotic. After exchanging fire, smoke settles over the area, so much so that you might not even see the other ship. It opened to fantastic reviews, but made just $212 million against a $150 million budget, all but ensuring that it lost money. Another shipfaring movie, Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl, came out just a few months before it and cleaned up at the box office, while Master and Commander found itself trounced by Elf, which came out the same weekend. And while nominated for 10 Academy Awards, it found itself up against Return of the King, one of the finest film accomplishments ever, though it would win, deservedly, for Best Cinematography and Best Sound Editing. It was more of a hit with older viewers, while younger viewers mostly went for other movies. The movie has aged like fine wine though, and many consider it to be one of the best historical epics of the era. It's an intelligently made blockbuster that ought to have done better. A franchise was planned at the time, but it was cancelled. Happily though, those plans are back on. According to 20th Century Fox CEO Steve Aspel, when asked about a prequel in October 2024, he said, quote, "I'm trying so hard. It's the first movie I worked on at Fox 20 years ago. We have a great script, it just needs the right director," end quote. Here's hoping. Set in 1970s Los Angeles, 2016's The Nice Guys, directed by Shane Black, is a neo-noir buddy comedy that starred Russell Crowe as an enforcer and Ryan Gosling as a bumbling private investigator. After Crowe breaks Gosling's arm in the movie, the two need to team up to investigate the disappearance of a young woman, played by Margaret Qualley, and end up involved in a conspiracy. Gosling's character's daughter, Holly, gets involved too, adding some heart and comic relief to an increasingly dangerous case. The Nice Guys was one of my favorite movies of 2016. As a fan of Shane Black's work from the Lethal Weapon days, as well as a fan of 2005's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, another neo-noir comedy, I figured that Nice Guys would be right up my alley, and it was. It had Black's blend of sharp dialogue, intricate plotting, and amusing action, buoyed by the comic chemistry between Crowe and Gosling. It's not just the lines though, it's the physical comedy, especially on Ryan Gosling's part. His character screams, fumbles with guns, and plays a meek detective to Crowe's world-weary straight man. I never figured the two of them together in a film prior, but when you see it, it makes perfect sense. It's also something that one would expect of a Shane Black script. Like in Lethal Weapon, like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, it's tight and sharp with any and all excess trimmed off, leaving only what matters. Alas, despite pretty much universal acclaim and decent word of mouth, the movie ended up being a commercial disappointment. It made less than $63 million against a $50 million budget, eclipsed by the Angry Birds movie and Neighbors 2, both of which were released the same day. It also had to contend with Captain America: Civil War. I think that the R rating worked against it, but there was no way to do it right otherwise. Unfortunately, it was also a casualty of the hollowing out of the mid-budget theatrical movie. Buddy comedy started going direct to streaming, something that's only accelerated in the years since. When it did hit streaming, people did watch it. Black and the Stars wanted to do a sequel, but they were pretty upfront about the chances and the importance of the box office. Black said that, quote, "We really need people to see this one before we can even talk about that. We're up against some stiff superhero competition, and we just need people to, maybe see Captain America 6 times, but not the 7th and see us instead," end quote. Meanwhile, in 2024, Gosling said, quote, "So much of a sequel, I think, is decided by the opening weekend of a movie, and we opened up against Angry Birds. So Angry Birds just destroyed us. Angry Birds got a sequel," end quote. I don't think a sequel is forthcoming. Unfortunate, as it's such a good original movie, but that's just the landscape we have right now. 2015's The Man from U.N.C.L.E., directed by Guy Ritchie, is a reimagining of the 1960s TV show as a stylish Cold War spy film. It pairs Henry Cavill's Napoleon Solo with Armie Hammer's Ilya Kuryakin as they form an uneasy alliance to stop the bad guys from building a nuclear weapon. Basically, the usual spy stuff. They're joined by Alicia Vikander, the daughter of a German scientist, and the trio need to navigate political and personal tension as they go about their missions. Ritchie channeled his visual style into an elegant, controlled film that feels fresh and classically made. Cavill and Hammer, despite the latter's later issues, have solid chemistry as they play against each other, bickering but developing a grudging respect for each other. The set pieces are creative, and Ritchie's attention to detail serves him well here. Each frame is pleasing to look at, from the costumes to the production design that recreates 1960s Rome and Berlin. It doesn't feel like a pastiche, even in a world where spy is synonymous with James Bond. The film is competently made, a joy to look at, and was a fun watch in theaters. Alas, not everyone felt that way. Perhaps expecting a franchise starter, the movie had a budget of as high as $84 million, but made just $110 million at the box office, a total flop. That pretty much nixed any plans for a sequel. It got praise for its style, performances, and entertainment value, though some thought that it prioritized style over substance. I'm not sure that I agree. While it wasn't going to win any awards for best screenplay, it's a competently written and directed film. There were plans to do a sequel, but they never ended up happening thanks to the box office. A shame, as it's the kind of movie that I think that we need more of. While it is ostensibly an adaptation, it's an adaptation of an old show that I think most people didn't even know existed. Most of the audience was probably so far removed from the show that it might as well have been an original. Not every movie needs to be the greatest work of art ever made, and most don't aspire to that level of greatness. Some films are just great for 2 hours of enjoyable entertainment, and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. falls squarely in that tradition. All the elements were in place: a talented director with a clear vision, charismatic stars with room to grow in their roles, a premise that could have supported multiple future films, and it looked great to boot. Alas, it ended up falling well short of the mark, even though it was well worth the price of admission. Peter Yates is one of the all-time great directors. He wasn't a flashy auteur like many of the new Hollywood, but he was a master craftsman who excelled at directing character-driven movies. That's on full display in his 1973 classic, The Friends of Eddie Coyle, which starred legendary actor Robert Mitchum as the eponymous Eddie Coyle, a low-level crook in the Irish mob that starts cooperating with the ATF in order to avoid jail time for a hijacking. The movie is based on George V. Higgins' novel of the same name, one that acted as somewhat of a counterpoint to The Godfather. Both the book and the movie focus on realism and the unglamorous nature of crime. They're non-romantic and unsentimental. These aren't feel-good stories. The movie was shot on location in Boston and unfolded with an almost documentary-like attention to detail, capturing the mundane details of criminal life. A masterpiece of American realism, it stripped out the glamour and excitement that usually comes in crime films. Rather, what you see are weary professionals, and what you feel is quiet dread. Mitchum, who played the preacher in Charles Laughton's 1955 classic, The Night of the Hunter, delivered one of his finest performances as a man who knows he's done for, but keeps going through the motions. He's going to prison, but he thinks that maybe, just maybe, he can cut a favorable deal. It requires him to turn on his crime family and his friends. But that's the rub. Coyle isn't some higher up. He's not someone that has people looking out for him. The title is just ironic, in fact. Eddie Coyle has no friends. As Roger Ebert put it in his 4 out of 4 star review, we watch a man, quote, almost sadly as his time runs out, end quote. Yates is not a flashy director. His style is observational and patient. He lets scenes play out, finding tension in ordinary conversations that carry life or death implications just underneath the surface. Eddie Coyle's fate is not dramatic, it's pathetic, the grinding down of a man that hardly matters. Despite being released in 1973 and people going for these kinds of films at the time, the audience did not go for The Friends of Eddie Coyle. It got decent reviews from critics but failed to make back its $3 million budget. Critics praised Mitchum for one of his finest performances, but an utter lack of heroes and a downbeat tone made it a hard sell for audiences. In the years since, however, it's widely considered to be an American classic. It had a big influence on Ben Affleck's The Town, and it deserves to be considered with the other great crime classics of the 70s, including The French Connection, Chinatown, The Godfather, Serpico, and others. It's the kind of intelligent filmmaking that we need more of right now, a character-driven film that's well written, well acted, well directed, and timeless. The inclusion of Rob Reiner's 1987 classic, The Princess Bride, might seem like an odd inclusion here. It made just shy of $31 million at the box office on a $16 million budget, but it's really the staying power that made it a success. Adapted by William Goldman from the novel he wrote and directed by Rob Reiner, The Princess Bride might be one of the most beloved movies around today. It's got everything that you want in a fantasy adventure: swashbuckling, pirates, a kidnapped princess that must then be rescued, sword fights, true love, and on and on. It's actually pretty remarkable that the film strikes as well of a balance as it does between acting like a fairy tale and a parody without ever lacking sincerity. Every element works in harmony. Goldman's dialogue is eminently quotable. Reiner knows how to play each scene, whether completely straight or as a wink. Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits did the music, and the cast completely understands the assignment. The chemistry between the ensemble cast and the exciting action sequences, along with one of the finest sword fights of all time, all came together to create something that would appeal to children and teens and adults. Cary Elwes had an idea of why that was the case. In his words, quote, "The movie has an incredible life from generation to generation. I guess it's because it's so sweet and has a really good heart," end quote. People seem to agree. This is a movie for all ages, but I guess that also presents something of a challenge when marketing. That is, how do you market something that can have such broad appeal? It was something that they had trouble figuring out, and Reiner, for his part, blames the lack of theatrical success on the marketing, saying, quote, "The studio never knew how to market it. We literally never had a trailer. They tried to sell it as a zany comedy," end quote. It wouldn't be until after its theatrical run that it became the cultural touchstone we know it as now. Its reputation has grown so immense that it's easy to forget that it wasn't some blockbuster sensation when it came out, despite deserving to be. It shows that, sometimes, it takes time for a film to find its audience or vice versa. Reiner also noted that in an oral history of the movie, saying, quote, "It takes time, sometimes, for these kind of oddball movies to find an audience," end quote. Thankfully, it did. 1939's The Rules of the Game, or Le Règle du Jeu, is now considered to be one of the greatest films ever made. That was not the case on its release. It's a satire directed by Jean Renoir, and if the name sounds familiar, it should. He was the son of French painter Pierre-Auguste Renoir. The movie follows the upper class of French society and servants at a French chateau during a hunting party where romance and class tensions flare. The number of entanglements and characters is large enough that trying to explain what actually happens would be too confusing. Suffice it to say, it's amusing to watch it play out. Everyone is entangled with everyone else, but they can't let others know or see. The rules of the game are the unspoken rules that govern their and our society. Keep up appearances, don't make a scene, don't cause a fuss, and handle situations discreetly. What matters isn't what you do, but how you do it. All of us, you and I, abide by the rules of the game on a daily basis. This was Renoir at his best. A celebrated filmmaker, he had a 2.5 million franc budget for this one, which ballooned to 5.5 million, the most expensive French movie made at the time. It was well spent. Renoir managed to capture the social choreography of both Wolof and their servants so well that people hated him for it. The movie premiered on July 7th, 1939, less than 2 months before France and Britain declared war on Germany. In that context, the famous hunting scene where guests shoot rabbit and pheasant took on a whole new meaning. It stood as a metaphor for the violence that lurks just beneath our civilized surface. That is, the rules of the game are supposed to separate us from our baser instincts, but they do nothing of the sort. The film explored a society in decay, unable to acknowledge the reality of the situation that it was in, taking refuge in performance and artifice. Turns out, people really weren't ready for that message at the time. The movie was a critical and commercial disaster, so bad that Renoir considered quitting directing. Critics found it tedious, unclear, offensive in how it depicted the French on the cusp of war, and unpatriotic. Renoir cut it from 115 minutes to 85 minutes, but then the wartime government banned it for demoralizing people. Renoir himself was surprised at the hostility, being translated as saying, quote, "I was utterly dumbfounded when it became apparent that the film, which I wanted to be a pleasant one, rubbed most people the wrong way," end quote. He was eventually vindicated, but it took 2 decades. During the Allied bombings, the original negative was destroyed. It was only through painstaking work over a long time that the movie's original 115-minute cut was reassembled by film enthusiasts Jean Gabaret and Jacques Marchal. When it re-premiered in 1959, it was hailed as a masterpiece, which it is. The relationship between box office and quality is a fickle one. A terrible movie can succeed, a great movie can bomb, as many of these did. But I'd like to think that, thanks to our wide access to films now, that won't always be the case, that eventually movies can find their audience. Still, I hope it starts happening more often in theaters. That's how we get more of the good stuff, after all.